Okay, this next hand we're going to talk about is against an absolute beast. Okay, this beast of a man, previously, the year before in the Super High Roller Bowl, busted me in about 40 minutes by veering far from GTO and exploiting the shit out of me, and he did so, and he owned me really hard. And I was really, whatever, in the spot, I'm like, oh, the solver said it was fine to call my hand, whatever, all this stuff. But then I didn't realize, like, this guy didn't give a shit. He thought I was going to overcall in the spot. He went for it hardcore, and he got me. He got me good. So it led me to really be interested, and I already was interested in to see, like, what exactly is this guy doing that nobody else is doing? How is he playing differently than other people? And because he's been crushing, he's been winning everything, and he's a monster. He's very difficult to play against and very tough. So I delved into a lot of what he was doing, and I found it, obviously we don't have a similar approach, but his approach is, I guess, what you would call, according to like the norm, unconventional. It's really not, in that I'm sure he's studied the lines that he's taking more than other people. And I think the trap that a lot of people who study fall into today, and you're probably one of them and listen, this is not at all even remotely a diss to any coaching or training sites at all, or solver use or anything like that. But typically what you find is you find the way in which people input into a solver is they give it 3 options to choose from. And it's like 1/3 pot, 2/3 pot, 1.5x pot. Tell me what to do, solver, right? Where, let's say, for example, you're a guy who says, you know what? I'm going to study different sizes. I'm going to study 60% pot, 120%, and 180. And I'm going to figure out what the computer does if I give it those questions, right? Or whatever the case may be. Or in Addamo's case, maybe 4x pot. Who knows, right? I don't know what he was studying, but he was definitely studying in a different way than the norm. And I think outliers historically have always done really well in poker. And what do I mean by that, an outlier? Well, you look at Doyle Brunson as the innovator. He played differently than everybody else, right? Nobody was limping with like little pairs and suited connectors and stuff like that. They were folding those hands, right? Phil Hellmuth came about. Nobody was playing as aggressive as he was. Nobody was like opening that many pots and 3-betting and doing these kind of things, right? I came along. I did things very differently with a much more small ballish type approach, right? Then you saw someone like Vanessa Selps come by, and she was just beasting people, right? By sticking it in their face, putting them to the test with some really aggressive, like, turn and river bluffs. And, you had Fedor Holtz doing something. Sure about that. my watch says I'm not sure about that. I am. Okay. And then you had the Fedor Holtzes do that as well. Then you have Addamo, who, he's like the newest version of the animal, right? So when I generally play in a lot of these high rollers, like for the most part, a lot of these guys employed a very similar strategy. You see the same sizes, you see the same stuff. Addamo's different, bro. he follows his own set of rules. And I respected that and appreciated it. And again, it led me to a lot of epiphanies about how far from solved or perfect any human's ever going to play. Right? So then you beg the question is like, how important is it to be actually balanced if nobody will be able to exploit you anyway, really? Or like if people don't know. So for example, you run into problems when people start to figure out what you're doing suboptimally or how you're veering. For example, the extreme one. Okay, Daniel never ever bluffs the river. Okay? I know this. So guess what? They'll kill me now. If they knew that and I was doing that. If I still did that, they would just fold every time. That's what happened in 2016, 2017, by the way. I showed my results. Maybe you can post them, whatever, over the last decade. And I had winning year over year. In 2017, I think I broke about even. I started to turn the corner. 2016, I think I lost 1.2. Why? How'd that happen? Partly, it's luck, but also everybody started fucking folding, right? They're like, Negreanu doesn't bluff. Oh, shit. Now I'm screwed, right? Because they figured out my exploit. Now, it required me to be more balanced, so I had to increase my bluffing. But the issue is, until people figure that out about you, it can work whichever way you go. If you bluff a lot and people don't catch you, keep it up until they do, right? So the idea of achieving balance would only be really relevant if you're planning on playing like a lot of hands in the same groups. But that's not how tournaments work. You rarely run into the same people. Obviously, online you do so more. But anyway, let's talk about Addamo here.
Not sure everyone agrees with that, but
yeah, who cares? Screw that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's very unlikely that you're a human. You're not a kid. Something else.
Alrighty, here we
But
go.
nice, nonetheless.
Blind on blind blood.
If someone next to me asked me to move my leg 6 times, I would have moved it on the first time. But then they wouldn't have. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's what you were trying to say?
Upscope to.
I'm trying to ask you in a different kind of way to move your leg.
I don't know, like my legs are directly in front of my body.
And I can't put mine directly in front.
Well, then that's something to do with, like, I can't put my legs.
Why don't we
somewhere
both
else.
sit sideways?
Raise here from Addamo.
Riveting positional negotiations
Defend
transpiring
from
between
Daniel.
Winter
Positional,
and Foxen. By the way,
That's right.
Well, as I said, Adamo's a beast. I've got position on him, which is very valuable to have against a very aggressive player like him. He is in the small blind, and he makes it 4.5x. So it's a big raise, right, from the small blind. And typically, at that stack depths, you're going to see 4x or 4.5, 3, anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5x. He chooses 4.5. I'm in the big blind. I know he's opening. Like, just because he makes a big raise doesn't mean I think he's opening like a tight range. I think he's just going to be opening hands like Jack 5 suited and whatnot. So with a hand like Queen 8 off, not a great hand, not that pretty, but pretty much any time you're going to have 2 cards higher than an 8 in the big blind against the small blind, you've got enough to see a flop with, right? Whether that's King 9 off, you get what I'm saying. Queen 8 is probably at the bottom end of the 8 and above range, but it's still good enough to call when you think about it. I'm calling, 7,000 in position, and we're pretty deep against a tough player. So
just from the physical
That's the only way we can make
standpoint,
it work.
I suggest Winter perhaps allow Alex to place his legs where he likes, unless
sideways.
things get contentious. Meanwhile,
We shall see,
monotone
Ali.
King 8-5, middle pair and bottom pair here.
Isn't that weird? We can put 9 up here. How do we not have space?
Yeah, I don't know. Because this takes up like a third of the table, and they decide not to put anyone in it.
You feel that earthquake?
now the flop comes. Here comes the flop. The flop is King 8-5, all of clubs. This is what's known as a monotone board. Okay? Monotone. What the heck does monotone mean? Monotone means a flop that's like all the same suit. Okay? Solvers, when it sees a flop like this in heads-up situations, loves the rinky-dink bet. Loves it. Solvers go, oh, 3 spades, oh, 3 clubs. Gotta bet the little bit, the little dinky, because solvers love it. They love the dinky bet. I remember this when I was really diving deep in. I'm like, man, it always does the dinky bet, like pretty much always. So is this optimal? Maybe if it was a solver actually employing it, but I don't think humans who do this. Basically, I think the solver's an idiot with this one. I do. I think solvers are dumb. Now, solvers are genius, but they're also really stupid with that auto like dinky bet on every fucking monotone board. Like I see all the guys do it. I'm like, all right, I'm going to just absolutely annihilate you if you keep doing this. Go ahead, be my guest, right? Let's see. Let me put you in jail and see what you do. And it's sort of what happens in this hand, except I have the best hand, and it's fine. I don't really put him in jail. So Addamo knows this. Addamo has a wide variety of sizes in his repertoire. And so with 20,000 in the pot, he bets the absolute minimum, 10% pot, 2,000.
Addamo,
Holy
One-
shit, our leg is moving.
10th pot.
Great, I got a buzz. Bzz, bzz. Chair shaking, 17K. I mean, supposed to do a min raise here, but I 17.
Well, Addamo with that cutesy sizing now emboldening Daniel to turn the 8s into a little bit of a
He's certainly
take it down here affair.
emboldened with a hand that isn't typically emboldened for such a play on a board like this. And Adamo's 10% some odd bet is actually somewhat customary on these monotone boards. You just target the auto folds, of which there is quietly an abundance. But as you said, Daniel felt emboldened.
Somebody's trying to help me. Thank you, whoever it
Very
is.
nice.
Now, when he bets 2,000, I expect him to do this a lot. With really, I think, like, so just because he bet 2,000, people are like, well, he would never do that with a flush. Sure, he would. Absolutely. He'll do that with a set of kings. He'll do that with a lot of hands. So I don't look at the 2,000 and go, because a lot of people do this. I mean, when I talk to Mattisel about hands, like, he just doesn't get it. He's like, oh, yeah, when he bet 2,000, I knew he was weak. I'm like, really? He bets 2,000 no matter what there, bro. Like, that's his bet. It's not telling you that much. However, with 20,000 in the pot, the question is, how do people react to reasonably sized raises on these flops? Like, what does that do to their ranges? How does it shrivel up? How difficult is that to play against this deep out of position? Like, what is the correct defense, right? How many people really spend the time to solve how to deal with flop, with someone raising the flop in these spots? Are they going to be 3-bet bluffing enough? Are they going to be 3-betting pretty much at all? I don't know because I haven't really gone down that rabbit hole. But I decide, and this is where, old school guys would say, with the queen 8 on the king 8-5 flop, and I have no club, this is where they would go, well, I'm going to find out where I'm at. Yuck. And people laugh about that concept. All the kids, I remember around 2011, they mock this concept of finding out where you're at, right? As though it's, just really bad because it's not balanced, bro. It's not perfect, whatever the case may be. But it can serve some purposes, especially if you are doing this with your strong hands. Like, if you are raising here with your flushes, if you're raising with kings and 8s, you're raising with king, queen with a club, which maybe that's not the hand to do it with. But if you are raising your strong hands, you can also raise your marginal hands and your bluffs as well. So what bluffs would you raise on this spot? Something like, how about 6-9 with a club, maybe, right? Something like that's a pure gut shot and a club. An example that was similar to this, that happens when there's 4 left, so maybe we'll get to the hand. I'll save it. But anyway, I think, and this is funny because I know when I was doing work, like this was something that was gutted from my game, and I really didn't like that. I really did not like that. I fought against that when we were working on, the heads-up challenge and stuff like that. I actually enjoy, because I was a limit hold'em player back in the day, and limit hold'em, you do a lot of flop raising. You're always throwing punches. You're the one taking initiative in hands and stuff like that. Well, in no limit, you're not doing that nearly as much. You're more like stack protection. You're more calling. You're more concerned with protecting your calling range, right? Because if you raise the flop with if basically every time you have a good hand, you raise the flop, then when you only call, your opponent can just destroy you on turns, right? Because he knows you can't have the top of your range because you're raising flops with that. But if you can somewhat balance your flop raises with some strong nutted hands, some mediocre hands, and some garbage, right? I think personally, especially in a tournament, I think that's tough to play against, y'all. I know another guy who does that. He gets mocked a lot for that one. Maybe I'm one of them who mocked. No, but Phil Hellmuth does that too. He does this a lot. He loves these kind of plays, and I won't go too in depth into why it's valuable, especially for him. But see, this is the hand where I'm raising, right? If Addamo does 3-bet me here, he's going to bluff me sometimes, and that's fine because I'm not continuing, right? I'm not raising here with an 8 and a queen and just hoping. If he 3-bets me, if he finds it with like the ace of clubs as a bluff or just, some whatever, 6-9 with a club himself, good for him, But I'm putting him to the test to do that rather than me because I've already made it 17. So his raise is going to have to be to what, like 45, 50? He's going to have to be the one risking more. And if I have flushes and I have the strong part of my range, he's just going to be losing a lot. So that hand, I mean, listen, it really was to a certain degree a find out. It was a combination of a find out where you're at and deny equity, right? Because with queen 8, let's say he has like jack 9 off. With just like, let's say he has jack 9 with a club. He might even call the raise maybe, which is fine because now, I'm playing position. But like, let's say he's jack 10 off and I just call and then the turn's a 10. Check. Like this way I get to deny equity as well. So I deny equity. I also get to, if he continues on this flop, let's say he calls the flop, right? Well, what am I going to give him now? Pair of something, a big club of some kind, maybe a pair and a club. Maybe a flush, maybe sets, 2 pairs, all those kind of things. But I no longer, I no longer think he's going to be in there with 10 jack of hearts, for example, on that flop. He's gone. All those hands are gone. So I can narrow it down a little bit, which is exactly what finding out what you're at, it's all about. Yeehaw! We're going to do a strategy book straight out of 1977, y'all. We're going to show you how it worked in the Super High Roller Bowl.
All right, guys, for a while you've been hearing me talk about exploit versus GTO and all this kind of stuff, and always heard me say that the best of the best play a hybrid between the two. But it's important to understand the theory. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to Hybrid Poker, and I want you to take the IQ test, okay? It's totally free. You take the 30-spot test, and then you take the longer test, which is 120 spots. Here's the deal. The top 4 scores on there will have an opportunity to come out to Vegas, and two of you will get a staking package for up to $50,000. The entire hybrid library is available now. And the AI, essentially what it'll do is it'll start to pick up based on your IQ test. What do you do well? What do you need work on? And it'll constantly evolve, and you'll start to see your scores improve, and you'll understand how the game of poker works better. So check it out, hybridpoker.com.